right. I'm live right now here on MazzaMedia. Just going to do a quick non-formal show here this afternoon. Getting ready to make chicken wings and get those ready for dinner tonight. So, yeah, I am. Not much to cover today, but I had some thoughts that I wanted to bring up, and that's just kind of really that video I just saw a little while ago of Karen walking out of court at some point today and really having an issue with the verdict slip. That really being an issue. That definitely was a huge issue. And this is really becoming another situation again here where Karen's, trying to fight for freedom. They've gone to court. They've had the trial. They've done whatever they need to do, right? And, go through weeks or months or whatever it is of trial and all this stuff and having witnesses on the stand. And now, you get to this point where, okay, well, here's the jury, here's the verdict slip. Here it is. And once again, it's controversial. It's now I'll be honest, I think it's less confusing than last year. I talked about it last night when I was on the Young Jerks, and I'm getting ready to cook right now. I talked about it last night when I was on the Jerks. I went over the verdict slip. I made sense of it, and I'll be honest, it was easier to make sense of that verdict slip than it was last year's verdict slip. There's no question about it. It was a lot easier this time around, but you don't know how the jury is going to feel about it. How are they going to perceive it? How are they going to look over that and analyze that, make heads or tails of it, and all that good stuff? And it just, it's just a tough situation right now. It's a situation I don't like, and I'm not a big fan of it. I'm really not. And it's a problem for me because of this thing. You go through two trials, and both of them end controversially. Both of them end with, well, it turns out that the jury got confused and the judge takes liberty with that. And then she makes the whole thing end in a mistrial again. Well, all of a sudden you're going over a third trial. So I honestly think the jury's going to get it right. I think they're going to declare her not guilty on everything, even probably that OUI charge. But I sit here and I say to myself, man, can you imagine for a second if this thing ends exactly the same way as it did last year? And this is part of the reason why, what's happening today. Karen Reed's team filed that motion, like they did to get that verdict slip changed. And, sure enough, I sit here a week ago and I'm 55% confident that this thing's going to end in controversy. And sure enough, Karen's defense team goes right in that courtroom today, as we've learned, and they basically battle this judge for the second straight year over that verdict slip. And it's really too bad. It really is, because this verdict, like I said, I was able to look at that thing last night and make sense out of it. But even when I explained it, even Nan Gallagher agreed that I explained it right. But even that aside, it was still confusing to some of the people tuning into that show last night. And like I said to Mike on the Young Jerks last night, this represents what you typically would, the Karen Reed movement typically represents the sample size of a typical jury. Some people are going to be confused. Some people will not. Some people will be able to get it. Some people will not. It just depends. But when you can't be putting a verdict slip that makes that much confusion. Is that confusing to a jury? And to me, I think that last year they did that on purpose. And sure enough, you had jurors saying, "Oh, well, we declared her not guilty on two of the counts. We just were hung on the second count and the lesser charges is what happened." But there's no video tonight. I'm in the kitchen cooking right now. I'm actually getting chicken wings ready to cook for dinner tonight. I'll post them on X later. But just doing a quick show tonight. Yeah, no, I got the faucet running right now. I'm rinsing off my chicken wings. I got one hand holding my phone, one hand rinsing off some wings and throwing them in the pan. It's gonna be good. I'm making garlic parmesan chicken wings. They're going to be fantastic. I can't wait for these. I was going to cut them up. They're whole wings, but I'm not going to cut them up. I'm just going to make them whole. I don't get the time to make them all fancy. For Super Bowl Sunday or something, yeah, sure. Tonight, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to cook this. I'm going to go on live real quickly, do a quick show, and then that's it. Move on with the evening. But yeah, this verdict slip, is obviously a cause for concern once again. It was a cause for concern last year. It's a cause for concern now. And both times, Karen Reed's defense team has asked for certain amendments to take place on it. And this year is no exception. I do have an air fryer. Well, I have a toaster that's an air fryer. But I'm not going to be using that today. I got too many wings to cook to fit in that toaster oven. It's a standard size toaster, so I'm gonna bake my wings. Fried wings are good. I actually preferred mine oven baked. I don't know why, but I just do. But it's just the way I prefer it. But that done. Rinse my hands. I should be on video, just like cooking wings live on the show today. But no, I don't got time for that. But no, hey. This is a problem once again, because again, if this jury doesn't get it. But here's the thing that I'm actually pretty reassured about. I'll say this, and this was reported by Mark Betterow on his X. Betterow said that the jury never once went to go see the judge or anything about any call-ins, any appearances in the courtroom with any questions yet. Usually there's some jury questions. There's been none of that so far. That's what I've heard from Betterow. And that's great news. I mean, if they didn't have any questions yet, then hopefully they're not confused by that verdict slip. Hopefully they kind of looked at it, got it, understood it. Either that or they're holding all their questions till later. I don't know. But I'll tell you, hopefully this jury's got it together in terms of understanding. I mean, like I said, do I think the verdict slip's confusing? Yes, I do. Do I think that it can be figured out? Yes, I do. I looked over it pretty thoroughly over the weekend. I was able to look at it and figure some things out and say to myself, yeah, I think I can figure this out. I think. Am I still alive here? Just double checking. Okay. That all said, I think, like I said, hopefully this jury was just able to look at it. Because, I mean, realistically, if you look at the verdict slip, if she's not guilty on everything, all they have to do is check off that first box on page 1. That's all that really needs to be done. Then on page 2, they just select guilty or not guilty. But if they end up thinking she's guilty on something, then they start checking off boxes 2, 3, 4, or 5. Then beyond that, I'm not putting the camera on because I'm in the kitchen and I'm walking around a lot, and it's usually a little grainy when I use my phone, so that's why I'm not using the camera today. So I'm cooking in the kitchen right now. I'm just kind of doing a quick show because I don't have much time tonight, and I just wanted to go live and voice my opinion instead of doing like a what do they call it there? The session, whatever the sessions are on Twitter. I decided to just do it this way. So just to talk, just to have a little conversation. That's about it. But like I said, this I don't think this verdict slips as confusing as it seems. It seems to me, like, based on what Karen said, that she wants it to be a little bit more, have a couple extra options on it, which would be good. But this judge, of course, what is she going to do? Nothing. That's what this judge does. The defense walks in there. They try to make fair arguments. They try to ask for fair things. And what does Judge Beverly Canoni do? What she's always done, which is nothing. If the prosecution went in there and had questions, the prosecution, the prosecution both years in a row has not had any issue with the verdict slip. Have you noticed that? Like, when did Lally ever once complain about the verdict slip a year ago? Is Hank Brennan crying and complaining about the verdict slip this year? No. Both times, it's Karen Reed and her defense team that are looking at the thing and saying, hey, this thing is not very clear. this thing is not very what have you. And that's, to me, that tells a big story. That tells a really big story for sure. And that's one of my concerns right now about this whole thing. And I think that there's a level of uneasiness right now last year had a bearing on the outcome of that trial and ultimately led to, them contesting it with the Supreme Court, them filing all kinds of, questions, comments, petitions, all that stuff. It led to a year's worth of issues. And that's my big concern again is, does this jury get it wrong? And the thing is, even though that jury, for the most part, knew what they were, knew what they were not guilty on, then they also were very clear that they were hung. That judge took advantage of the situation. And what did she do? Oh, you're hung on it, so we're just going to declare a mistrial. She knew what she was doing, in my opinion. I'm sorry. By basically having to go through all the means, the legal process, whatever it is, to try to fight last year's trial. And then when it all comes down to it, everything gets, goes against the way they wanted it to go. And they got to go back to a second trial with counts 1 and counts 3 on the board, and having to fight this thing from like the reset button was hit. Like the reset button was hit, basically. And it's really sickening because, like I said, I do believe this jury could get it right. I'm not having any faith right now, any lack of faith right now. But how, this is why a week ago, people were saying to me, come on, Maz, it's going to be not guilty. Don't say 55% probability it's going to be rigged or mistrial. Then, what is the big talk? This is the thing. This is what I'm trying to say. This is what I'm trying to say. Is I was always looking at this stuff at the very end result before this second trial even began. Because I was waiting for this moment. I was waiting for this moment to happen. And sure enough, it does. By the time we get to the verdict slip, now all of a sudden it's a big controversy. Most people that are Karen Read supporters are worried about this verdict slip right now. And a week ago, I was on my channel, on my X page, and I posted, what did I post? I said 55% chance probability, 55% probability that this thing's fixed or rigged and she declares a mistrial. I ended up lowering that to 20%. But I refuse to go any lower than 20% because I just cannot go lower than 20% because I still think that judge is still ruling that court. She's controlling that verdict slip. Yeah, the jury lottery took place in front of the courtroom, and I'm sure we all feel better about that this year, definitely. But at the end of the day, it all came down to the verdict slip last year, didn't it? I mean, regardless of who was on the jury, who wasn't, it came down to the verdict slip. And, all that stuff. So that's it. And this person's saying that Karen Read's going to jail. I know you're a troll. But I can say this. They're certainly trying to put her behind bars, aren't they? They're certainly trying. Because when they didn't get their way last year, they certainly tried to put her in a... I'm going to put wings in the oven here. All right, there we go. 425 degrees. Oh, it's a gas oven, so I'm going to set this for 45 minutes to start. 45 minutes. I hit this thing 45 times to get up there. There we go. 45 minutes. Boom. All right, ready to go. All right. And, it's just insane. It's just insane. What's going on in this courtroom again? But this is what I was worried about the whole time. Like, I'm sitting there all trying. Like, people are asking me, are you excited that the defense is getting better, the better of the prosecution? Hey, Mazza, don't be negative. I get it. I understand we want to be positive, and I understand we want to be encouraging. But when we're up against people like this that have a verdict slip that is downright suspicious, how can you not, how can you not be concerned? And when I put 55% chance, 55% probability of a mistrial and this judge causing all kinds of craziness, it was like, man, it's not out of the realm of possibility. It is not out of the realm of possibility at all. And, this is why I've been on high alert, because these people in Norfolk County, they've proven that they're willing to do anything and everything. I'm going outside to walk a little bit. They've proven that they'll do anything and everything. Just walk around the house. They've proven they'll do anything and everything to railroad Karen Reed, to put Karen Reed in jail, to shut her down by any means necessary. And until, like I said a week ago, until I hear, Karen Reed, you're not guilty and you're free to go, or Miss Reed, you're all set. Until I hear those words, you bet I'm absolutely on edge. You bet I'm absolutely fired up, worried, on, everything about this trial. And, I understand, a lot of people right now are probably a little bit frustrated that the verdict hasn't been reached yet. But, it does take some time. It does take some time. Definitely does. And it's something, that I think that, like I said, this jury could get it right. This jury could get it right. But it's just a matter of this jury not getting confused or not getting hung. Because, think about this. Say last year's jury just outright said, yeah, she's not guilty on everything. Right? Well, then there's really nothing that she could have really declared a mistrial on. She couldn't have declared, they couldn't have said, hey, this is a hung jury. Let's declare a mistrial. They really couldn't have done that. So those are things where it does come down to the jury. It comes down to the jury being able to just unanimously declare she's not guilty on everything. If they're able to do that, then, hey, then this thing's probably all going to be over. And the same thing probably would have happened last year, right? The problem became last year is that jury became hung. And when they became hung, that's when the judge took over. That's when the judge took control. And she goes, I'm going to declare a mistrial and I'm going to end this whole thing. And that's what she did. That's what she did. So it's up to this jury not to put it in this judge's hands on any one of those counts that's on that verdict slip. Basically, what you have to pray for tonight is that jury literally walks in there and just says, box number 1, not guilty on everything, including the lesser charges, game over. And then there's nothing that judge can say. Unless, of course, she just lies about what was on the verdict slip. Let's hope she doesn't think about that. But we know that jury, Ronnie the juror, love him or hate him, feel indifferent about him, whatever it is, no matter how you feel. That he did say, we did declare not guilty on 1. We did declare not guilty on 3. And that was one of the bigger controversies because those charges shouldn't have been in this second trial. It should have been a second trial, but just for count 2. That's it. That's it. But, that's the issue. That's the issue. And I do think one thing that is in Karen's favor this time compared to last time, I'll say 2 things. I do think, regardless of the controversy over the verdict slip, I do argue that this verdict slip is easier to decipher than last year's verdict slip. I had a much easier time. I did it live on the Young Jerks last night. It's easier to decipher than last year's. And I'll say that's something that's positive. Okay, it's still controversial, it's still confusing, but I think it's less confusing than last year. That's my stance on that. Now, I see someone in the chat here talking about 1 or 2 jurors that could potentially be Commonwealth plants. So I guess she's probably referring to the people with unknown positions, like that graph I displayed on LTL last night and the Young Jerks. There were 2 jurors I had highlighted in orange based on Turtle Boy's reporting, and they had unknown positions. Now, I'll tell you this. 5 of them have pretty strong positions on Karen Reid. 2 of them have unknown positions, but none of them had negative favorability based on what Turtle Boy was observing of their behavior throughout the trial. So that said, I do believe this jury should be, at face value, more favorable to Karen Reid than last year's jury, because the jury lottery did not take place before the court last year. And number 2, this, yeah, you're absolutely, Gabby, you're not wrong about that. You're not wrong about that. But I'll say this: I do believe in Turtle Boy, I do believe in Jess Machado, and I do believe in Nan Gallagher. And if they are saying, hey, they seem pretty favorable, or they seem like a pretty strong jury that can be trusted, then, I have to take that at face value. But I'll say this: I'd have to imagine that this jury, this 3 jurors that were seen as being visibly favorable towards Karen Reid, including Victoria George, all didn't make the cut. All didn't make the cut. So 3 people that were visibly favorable all didn't make it, right? Including juror number 3, who was on Turtle Boy recently and was ended up being kicked off the jury altogether, right? So then you look at it this year, Turtle Boy listed 6 jurors as visibly favorable, and 5 out of those 6 actually made the 12. So that's actually really good news. That's actually really good news. So I think, like I said, I think the verdict slip, while controversial, while confusing, is still more easy to comprehend. And I also think that the jury, at face value, is more favorable than last year's jury. So those are 2 things going in their favor. It's just like I said, I think the whole thing's a matter of this jury not getting hung on those lesser charges. Because if they do, that runs the risk of getting that verdict slip in Auntie Bev's hands and her just saying, I'm declaring a mistrial, and, all that stuff again. And God knows if, God forbid, and I've asked this question before, I think of Attorney Betterow or Attorney Gallagher. I've said, if the defense asks for the jury to be polled and Judge Beverly Cannoni says no, doesn't the judge have the right to deny polling the jury? Because it's my understanding that that the defense actually asked to see the balls that were pulled during the jury lottery, and they were denied that. So these are things that I have an eyebrow raised towards. These are the things that I'm looking for, and these are the concerns that I have. Fruition? I don't know. But like I said, I'm just not happy with the verdict slip once again. Very disappointed with that, because again, the last thing you want to see happen is a jury that's hung on any one of those accounts plus maybe the lessers, and then that judge just does what she did last year, which is absolutely screw over Karen Reid and force a second trial on all counts. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, I do ultimately remain confident that this thing's going to end in a not guilty verdict across the board. I just feel that, unfortunately, there's a lot of risk here with this judge and her verdict slip once again. And I didn't think Karen walked out of that court on the video that I saw this evening with the most, I'm not going to say the word confidence, but I'll say she didn't necessarily have a level of happiness, that we've seen her when she walks out of court, after, say, Arca gets the better of Brennan, right? And she'll walk out of there with that pep in her step, happy. And I didn't see that in that video I saw today. It was kind of like a, here we fucking go again, pardon the swear, kind of mentality out of her. And, that seems to be vibrating through all Karen Reid supporters, in my opinion. And yeah, you're probably right, KPT. They probably are arguing about that OUI. And that's, I don't want, let me say this. I don't want to be negative about Karen Reed's defense team. I don't want to be negative about her defense team. I try not to say anything negative. Very honestly, I very rarely see anything that I have to say negative about them, but I will say this. I thought in both trials, they could have gone deeper about the OUIs or about the blood alcohol levels. And I thought they could have gone deeper in both those trials. That's the only critique I have, really, that I'd say. I wouldn't call it necessarily negative. I'd probably call it more analytical. Is I think that they maybe could have done a little bit of that. And that's all I have to say. So that's it. That's it. I think that's the only thing. Maybe just a little bit. There's a big train going by. I don't know if you guys can hear that in the background. But like I said, that's the only critique I really have. I thought that was the one thing that I wanted to see more out of them in this trial. Nan Gallagher seems to be, Nan Gallagher, kind of really made a great point to me on one of the shows we were on. Might have been Brian's show, maybe even my own show. I can't remember anymore. But she said that Karina, who was at the waterfall that night, or CF McCarthy's, whichever, had actually said that Karen Reed walked out of there not looking all that intoxicated. So for me, it's just a matter of, did that jury retain that moment as much as someone like Nan Gallagher or other people did, enough to have the information they need while deliberating an OUI. So that's it. So like I said, I'm a little restless. This is kind of a vent session for me tonight, but I think that I do think it's going to be not guilty across the board. But like I said, I'm just concerned. It's partially like a PTSD from last year, where you're like, you saw what this judge did. Now all of a sudden you're seeing the verdict slip controversy again, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, is this going to go in the same direction that it did last year? And is it going to end the same way last year? And this whole process going to repeat itself once again? Is it going to be all this work, all this time, all this effort in two trials, and both times it's going to end because of a verdict slip? And in that, folks, you have the very essence of why I've had the mindset I've had for the past 2 months, which is I've just been waiting for the end result of all of this right on through the entire trial. I haven't been celebrating as much about day-to-day wins in court because I'm focused on the end result. Because in my opinion, and to my recollection, the defense has beaten up the Commonwealth 2 trials in a row. And both times it's coming down to confusing verdict slips. So this is what I'm looking out for. But again, I think Karen's going to be okay. So that's that. So I got some walking in here. Go over to the Young Jerks right now. Mark Betterow is joining Mike from the Young Jerks. I'll be here cooking chicken wings, but just wanted to get my opinion out on the internet very quickly here. But it's a nice day out, going for a nice little walk in the yard, enjoying myself a little bit. I'm going to eat some chicken wings and hear what Mr. Betterow has to say, our guy. So, ladies and gentlemen, have a good evening. From MazzaMedia, I'm Mark, and that's going to end this stream. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you.